So we're going to do here in the Gemara and the Megillah, we're up to page 26a, the middle of the page, here on 26a. So there is, the Gemara brought down, there was a question, who owns Jerusalem? We know most of Israel was divided amongst all the tribes. The various tribes got different portions of Israel. But the Gemara says that there is a machloikis, there is a disagreement whether Jerusalem belongs to all Jews, it was never been divided, or Jerusalem also has been divided, so it's personal ownerships. I mean, the question would be, can you sell the shul over there? That's how we came into this. So we'll start from Uviplukta Dahani Tanoi. This is the argument of the following Tanoim. So we will see that this particular Tana holds that Jerusalem was also divided, and the Temple Mount specifically, we're seeing, was divided between the two tribes of Yehuda and Binyamin. Now, if it was divided, that means that there could be ownership because it was their inheritance, so they could own it. So the Gemara brings down the Brisa. This Brisa discusses what part of the Temple Mount and the temple was in the part of Yehuda, and what part of the Temple Mount was in the part of Binyamin. The Gemara will say that when you start going up the Temple Mount from the east towards the west, so you're coming up from the east and you're climbing the Temple Mount, most of that place was Yehuda. Until you came to the actual Mizbeach, which stood in the courtyard before the temple itself. The temple itself, which includes the Ulam, that was the room before the Ohel Moed, and the Heichal, the room where the menorah, Shulchan, everything was standing, and the Kodesh HaKadoshim, that was all in the portion of Binyamin. We're only bringing this down to show that this part of Jerusalem was also divided amongst the tribes, unlike the other opinion that says that Jerusalem was never divided. It belongs to everybody. So the Gemara first brings down this Tanya. So we learn, Ma hoyo bechelkoi shel Yehuda. What part of the Temple Mount was in the portion allotted to Yehuda? The Gemara says, Har Habayis, the Temple Mount. Now, we're not talking about the entire Temple Mount. We're talking about not the entire Temple Mount, but we're talking about the empty place of the Temple Mount going up to, as we'll see. The expression over here, Har Habayis, the Temple Mount, Rashi explains, what we're talking about here, the part of Yehuda, the Temple Mount, is Biknisosoi Mitzad HaMizrach. As you entered from the east, everything in front of you, Kol Ma Sheyesham Ponui, everything that is empty, that is just the mountain, Korui Har Habayis, that's called the Temple Mount. She'ein lo Shem Achar, it doesn't have another name. So when we say Temple Mount, we're talking the area that has nothing else named. It's just Temple Mount. The empty space as you go up from the east onto the mountain. The next part is Halishochis. The Shochis were the rooms, the various rooms and storages which served the temple. And Rashi says, Shebetoich HaChel, that was in middle of the Chel. The Chel was an area higher up in which the Temple Mount, the temple and the Mizbeach and the courtyard, that's called the Chel over there. So there were rooms in the Chel that was also part of Yehuda. You're still climbing up, you're going higher and higher towards the actual temple, which was at the peak, almost at the peak of the mountain. And then you have Voha Azores and the courtyards. First there were the Leshachos, and then there were the courtyards. What kind of courtyards? There were actually 3 courtyards, are called Azora. There was the Ezras Noshim, the women's courtyard. Then there was the Ezras Yisrael, the Israelites and Levites courtyard. And then there was Ezras HaKohanim, the Kohen's Azora. As you went up higher and higher, there was the place where only the Kohanim can go. There is the place where the Israelites can go. And then there's the place where there was the Ezras Noshim. All these places of the Azores, the 3 Azores, they were still in the part of Yehuda. As you were climbing from the east upwards, that area were all the part of Yehuda. Rashi explains, what does it mean, Vaha Azores? Azores means Shloshton. All 3 Azores. Which are the Azores? Ezras Noshim, the women's courtyard, the Ezras Yisrael, and the men's. Then we're going to come to the Kohanim, but Rashi first explains the women's and the men's. Rashi explains what area was that, how many? Ezras Yisrael, Rashi says, Hein achas esrei amo. Those are 11 amo she Yisrael rashoyim lekones lifnim min hashar, in which Israelites are permitted to enter inside of the gate. So the women's courtyard was on the other side of the gate. Inside of the gate, the men were allowed to go 11 amos towards the Mizbeach, towards the Beis Hamikdash. 11 amos in from the gate. That is all part of Yehuda. Ba'acharehen litzad maidiv, and then also after the 11 amos, further towards the west, le'ezras kohanim, that was designated for the courtyard of the kohanim. How many? Yud Aleph Amo Shebein Drisas Ragle Yisrael, the 11 Amma in between the steps of the feet of the Israelite, LeMizbeach HaChitzon, to the external Mizbeach. The outer Mizbeach was 11 Amos moved beyond where the Israelites can go. Israelite Levites, they can't go. Only the last 11 Amos towards the Mizbeach, that's designated just for the Kohanim. All that area, the 3 Azores, is part of Yehuda's portion on the Temple Mount. So that we did this last week, so we're going, but we just started the beginning. It was all in the middle of the Brisa. Uma Hoyo, Bechelkoi, it was a big mistake, you erased the whole. Uma Hoyo, do it this way. Uma Hoyo Bechelkoi Shebenyamin. So now we told you what was the portion of Yehuda. What was in Binyamin's part of the Temple Mount? So the Ulam, that was the big room that was in front of the Heichal. The Heichal, that's the actual place where all the vessels of the Beis Hamikdash were. But in front of the Heichal, you had an Ulam, a hall, a huge hall, and the Heichal, and that's marching, going towards the west, from east to west. Higher up was the Ulam. After the Ulam was the Heichal. That was the room. And at the end, towards the west, was the Beis Kodesh HaKadoshim. That was the house of the Kodesh HaKadoshim. That's where the Aron were, the Luchas were. That was behind the curtain, the place of the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Not the curtain, behind the wall in the Beis Hamikdash. As Rashi explains now, so what was in Binyamin's portion? Because we read what was Yehuda's portion. Yehuda's portion was basically up till the Mizbeach, we said. But you will see in between the Mizbeach and the Ulam, there was also a stretch, Rashi is going to say. The question is, who did that please? So we're saying like this. So what was in Binyamin's portion? The Ulam, the Heichal, and the Kodesh HaKadoshim, Mitzad Ma'ariv, towards the west. So now, Achshav Yosef ben Time, Rashi's language is a little bit hard to decipher over here, but it says, so now what's the additional in between? So we know Binyamin starts with the Ulam. The portion of Yehuda ends by the third courtyard, by the courtyard of the Kohanim. So what happens in the addition in between the Mizbeach and the Ulam? So Rashi explains, Mekoim HaMizbeach, the area of the Mizbeach, it was large, was Lamed Beis Amo. That had 32 Amo. Ubein HaUlam VaHaMizbeach, and in between the Ulam and the Mizbeach, there was Chav Be'az Amo. It was 32 plus 22. 54 Amas in between the end of Yehuda's portion to the beginning of Binyamin's portion. So we told you where Yehuda's ended. We told you where Binyamin's began, but we still have an area, the place of the Mizbeach, which was 32 Amas, and between the Ulam and the Mizbeach, there was another 22 Amas. Shaloi Pirish Shalmiu. It did not explain whose it was. Chazaru Pirish. So the Brisa goes back and tells us. The Brisa tells us Ritzuo Yoitzo, that a small strip went out from the portion of Yehuda towards the Mizbeach, and it ate up in the corner, in the eastern corner of the Mizbeach was a part. So basically, if you draw a line, Yehuda is finished by the Mizbeach. But where the Mizbeach actually stood, there was a little strip that went into the 32 Amas, not the entire, but in the eastern side of it, a strip went inside. Upirish, as the quoting from the Gemara, we didn't learn yet, now we're going to learn. Ritzua yoitzochu. So what happened over here? How did it work? Limdoch kan, so that's teaching you here, Ritzua zu levado liYehuda. It was just that strip which was facing the Mizbeach belonged to Yehuda. Aval tzofoino shel Mizbeach, but the north of the Mizbeach, Uderoima and the south of the Mizbeach, Umarova in the west, shel Binyamin was a Binyamin. So while the Mizbeach, there was a strip from Yehuda's part that went into the Mizbeach that was only on the eastern side of the Mizbeach. The all other three sides of the Mizbeach were on the portion of Binyamin. So you have to imagine like a strip running under the Mizbeach, a narrow strip, but outside of that strip, everything else belonged to Binyamin. And there's another, Rashi brings down something very interesting. We know that there was a place that's called Yisoid. There was a base for the Mizbeach. It was an Amma by an Amma that circled the Mizbeach. They would pour the blood, El Yisoid HaMizbeach. It was an open, yes, go ahead.
I'm just curious, what is the
I'm sorry. What did you say?
I'm curious, what is the nafkamina of this? I mean, it wasn't like anyone in the Beis Mikdash was paying property tax on the land. If it was 5 amas here, 10 amas there, I mean, it was almost like Washington, D.C., an independent property.
But that he's actually trying to tell you that this was owned by these tribes. It wasn't, this opinion holds that it wasn't just it wasn't Washington, D.C., it was specifically owned. He's telling you exactly where the limits were, where everybody's boundaries were. But it didn't just belong to everybody.
So, but
that's exactly what he's telling you.
What could they do? You know, having ownership of.
What would they do there?
They could like block out. This is our side. You can't walk through here to get to this side.
Okay, right, good. I understand. Well, the issue really is not that area itself. This is just clarifying. We'll see a pasuk in a minute. He's going to clarify something. But the issue over here is we're going to see other people say that if you owned a house in Jerusalem, can you imagine today, you couldn't charge any rent because it didn't belong to you. It wasn't your property. It belonged to everybody. You couldn't charge rent. You couldn't charge for the space. Again, I'm not sure. I'm not going to go into. So can you kick another guy out? No, it doesn't seem like that. But it seems if you slept there, you weren't allowed to charge rent. But you were saying this opinion says you could because it belongs to somebody specifically. According to the other opinion, it didn't belong to anybody. But I'm not sure exactly what are you going to do with the Temple Mount where you're not allowed to walk anyways, like you're saying. Anyways, but I'm talking now about around the base of the Mizbeach, there was like an open a base over there, and you to pour the blood, and the blood went down through pipings down beneath, but the side of Yehuda did not have that foundation, that Yisoid, because by tradition, that was supposed to be in the portion of Binyamin. The blood needed to be poured in the portion of Binyamin, not in the portion of Binyamin. So Rashi brings down, in the tractate Zvachim, we say, She'ein li Yehuda ba'oisa haratzua, that Yehuda only has in that strip Elo hamizrachis Mekoim HaYisoid. He only had on the east of place where the foundation was. That's the spot. And that's why there was no foundation to the east of the Mizbeach, because you didn't want to pour it on Yehuda's portion. But according to this, the way Rashi brings down, he seems like he only had one amma inside that little strip that was the east side of the Mizbeach, not even go any further in, just a small spot. As the Gemara brings down now what Rashi says, Rashi brought it from the Gemara. Uretzua hoiso yoitzas bechelko shel Yehuda. There was a strip that would come out from the portion of Yehuda. V'dichneses bechelko shel Binyamin. It entered into the portion of Binyamin because all the sides belonged to Binyamin, and there was just a little bit of a pushing from the part of Yehuda that protruded into the area, into the part of Binyamin. Ubom Mizbeach Boni. And in it, the Mizbeach was built. So now he says, he quotes from the verse, V'hoya Binyamin HaTzadik. So Binyamin the Tzadik, in prophecy, when he saw that he isn't going to get the part of the Mizbeach, I mean, I'm not sure, he was mitztayer, he was in pain, alay. B'kol yom, every day leboilo, he wanted to swallow it in. He said, why is Yehuda protruding into my, he wanted to swallow in, he wanted that strip to be included in the part of Binyamin. Rashi said, B'hoi Binyamin HaTzadik, Soife B'ruach HaKodesh, because he saw, in Ruach HaKodesh, he saw, Shekein Osid Liyas, that that's what's going to happen, that Yehuda is going to stick in a piece by the Mizbeach over there, and he was in pain. I mean, give me a break. He gets all around there. But the fact that he has that part, I mean, again, I'm trying to think. It seems like even though Rashi says that place, B'koima Yisoid, meaning where there's the Yisoid, but apparently the Mizbeach itself stood on the section of Yehuda. And he had all around the Yisoid, yes, was on the part of Binyamin, but the actual strip where the Mizbeach stood on was the portion, it looks like it was the part of Yehuda. And he said, listen, I'm all around it. They wanted to swallow it in. Shenemar, as the Pasuk says in Vorim Lamed Gimel, Choyfef Alav. Choyfef means he was rubbing his garments. He was upset. Kol hayom, all day. He was Choyfef Alav because he wanted to have the Mizbeach on his part. Rashi explained, what does it mean, Choyfef Alav? Odom HaMitztayer, a person who's in pain, Choyfef u'mischachik b'bgodav. He rubs and he's scrapes with his garments. L'shoin shifshuf. It's a language of scrubbing. It brings the language from Nazir and Beis, that the Nazir sort of is allowed to scrape himself and not to wash, but the pastor can do that. But that's a language of being upset. So while he was upset, here it's all I'm surrounding the Mizbeach, and yet the Mizbeach is in the part of Yehuda. Lefikoch Zocha Binyamin, because he was so upset. So therefore he merited the Nase Ushpizachan Lishechina. He became the host for the divine. Because where did the Beis HaMikdash, we said before, the Ulam, the Heichel and the Beis HaMikdash, and the Kodesh HaKadoshim was where? Or in the part of Binyamin. He became the host of the Shechina. Ushpizichon shahoya orein bechelka was in his part. So that's one Tana. See very clearly that it had an owner. It was divided between the tribes. But the Gemara says, V'hai Tana Sovar. And the other Tana, who says that there is no ownership in Eretz Yisrael, holds the following Tana that we're going to learn now, that Lo Nischalko Yerushalayim Lishvotim, that Yerushalayim has not been divided by the tribes, as we will see in a minute in the Braisa, and that's the other opinion who says that Yerushalayim, in the Machloikis that we had before, whether you can sell the shul or not, in Yerushalayim, he holds, the following Tana holds, that it was not distributed amongst the tribes. This is, we said before, that there's two Tanas, whether you can sell or not, whether it belongs to a private or not, are these two Tanas. The one we just learned, who clearly said that it was divided between Binyamin and Yehuda, and now the following Tanya. The Tanya, we learned in the Braisa, Ein maskirin botim b'Yerushalayim. You're not allowed to rent out houses in Yerushalayim. So what does it mean? Rashi, Ein maskirim, balabatim. Those who own, I guess they live in those homes. You cannot rent it out as batayim, their homes la'oile regolim, to those who come out for the yontif to come to Yerushalayim. Elo bechinam noisnim lahem, v'nichnosum l'toichem. You give it to them free, and they go inside. That would be nice if you can get an apartment today in Jerusalem for free. That would be very nice. I think you'd have some more people going up. So it's probably one of the most expensive real estate is in Yerushalayim over there. But in any event, the Oilei Regolim were supposed to be let in free of charge. Because Mipnei, why? Sheina Shalahem, it's not theirs. They don't really own it because it was divided between the tribes. Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon adds to it, not only the property, even not the beds that are movable. Maybe you think maybe the beds that are movable, maybe you could rent them out. He says no. So it seems though a little unfair, or the owners, they're coming into their house and they're not paying for it, and they're not paying for their bed, they're not paying for staying there. So the Chachamim said, therefore, that oires v'kochim, that oires kochim, the skin of the kochim, when the people came up to Yerushalayim, they brought offerings. If you're talking about kochim kalim, like a toida korban or a shlomim, the skin belongs to the owners. So the hosts have a right to those skins as a payment, as a form of payment for using their place. The Chum said, Lefikoch, therefore, oires kochim, the skin of the kochim, which kochim Rashi explains, the toido shlomim. This is the thank korban that you bring, and a shlomim, a peace offering. Those are called kochim kalim, the light kochim, and the skin of those animals belong to the one who brings them. The guests, they came, they're bringing all these korbanos. So shaha oires labailim, this skin belonged to the masters. And he says, Bali ushpizin noitlin oison bizroya. So the people, the hosts, because they let him stay there for free, they can take it by force. So I guess they get to keep those, the Chachamim gave them something that to compensate for the fact that they're staying there. So they don't have to pay them anything, but they can take by force, they can take the skin of the animals that they brought as a korban. Omar Abaye, so Abaye, when he saw this, but in any event, you see in this brisa that there is no ownership in Yerushalayim. Abaye said, Shema Mino. So from here we can see that Oirach Ara, that it is the nature of the world. This is the derech eretz, the proper way. When you are being hosted by someone, even when he could make money, but if he's your host, the derech eretz is lemishbak inish gulfa. A person should leave behind the gulfa. What's a gulfa? That's a jug made out of clay that you used it. When you are staying in somebody's house, don't empty it out when you leave. Leave behind that jug, that clay jug. Apparently, it's a small item. Leave it behind for the owners. Same thing, umishcha, and a skin, I guess, of the animal. If you happen, Rashi says, im shachat behema. If you shechted a behema, leave him the skin. So basically, you see from there that you got to leave something behind. I mean, hibush pizeh in your host place. Now, here it doesn't say if you let you stay there for free, or he may charge you, or actually he may charge you because you left him a mess in his place and he wants you to clean it up. He doesn't want you. Don't believe me, any old clay jugs and hide of the animals. I don't want it here, no, but just telling you that something that you have to do for the other person. Okay, so this ends this this idea that we were discussing over here, that whether Yerushalayim is ownerless, belongs to everybody, or belongs to the tribes. Disagreement between these different brises that we just learned. So we learned in the Mishnah, we were learning that you cannot lower the standard. So if you sold a shul, that money, you have to bring something higher. You got to buy a Sefer Torah. Always use the money for something more holier. You have to go up a level. But not only that, even what you sold still remains in its sanctity. So if you sold a shul, the people that bought the shul got to keep it into a shul. They can't destroy it. They can't destroy it, and you can't use the money for anything lower, anything just up. So Rava says that this is only talking about you're just selling it a private sale. But if you come, every community in the olden days had the people that headed the community. They were called the Shiva Tuvei Ha'ir, the seven good of the city. They were like the president and the board that ran the affairs of the community. If the seven Tuvei Ha'ir, the seven good of the people, if they agree for the sale that you're doing, they have the authority to take it out of its kedusha, and you can sell, you can do whatever you want with that place, and the money, you don't have to buy something on a higher level. Omar Robert, says Robert, Loi Shonu. We did not learn two things. That we said before, we said two things. The ain moiridim domim migdushosom. You cannot lower money from their sanctity. Number one. And also, so in other words, the money you get for the sale, you have to buy something not less than the value that you sold it. And number two, the shul remains in its importance. It stays even while the person bought it. He can't do with it whatever he wants to. It has to stay a shul. Where do we see this? Maybe we didn't talk about it in the Mishnah. The Mishnah basically said what to use the money for. It didn't say what you sold. But Rashi says this would be dumya. Let's say we had a case. If you sold the svarim, if you sold like nevim, kesuvim, like sefer Torah, you can buy a sefer Torah. You can't get less. But what happens with the svarim? Can't throw out the svarim in the garbage. They still have the sanctity. The other one would lead the svarim as they are. So the people bought it, they're going to be using it as it is. So we're just talking money. So we're basically saying essentially, you can't sell a shul, you can't sell the sanctity, that remains, and the money cannot be used for something less. It has to go only for something higher. I know it doesn't talk about equal over here, but l'chayra equal should be okay too. It says you can't buy less, but evidently the same should be okay. We'll see what the Gemara maybe is going to address it soon. So he's saying, when does the holiness remain in the Beis HaKnesses, and the money needs to be used dafka specifically for something more important? Only if it wasn't sold by the seven good of the people, by the board. While the people were standing there. In other words, they met the approval of the people. And Rashi says, that the good one, the seven good ones, seven leaders, with the permission of the people. I mean, they were standing there. I don't know how you're going to get a consensus about anything, try to sell anything, there's going to be, many opinions. But anyways, it says here, they got the permission. I guess you need both. You need the seven, the board, the seven Tuvei Ha'ir, plus the agreement. But if they did sell, what happens then? Then the sanctity expires. It leaves the object and the money. Basically, the shul is no longer a shul, sold. The money is no longer bound to buy something more important. You can just do whatever you want. I mean, that wouldn't apply in the case that Rashi says you can't take out the kedusha of the Nevi'im Eksuvim, but in this case, in a shul, that would take it away. And you can do whatever you want. And Rashi says, but next page in the Gemara, we're going to have a question. And this is the question that Ravina asked Rabashi. Altilo debei knishta. He asks him about the if there is a heap, what it says, the shul was destroyed. Ma'u limizre. Are you allowed to sow grass over there because it's a destruction? Can you place it? Why? Why's the problem? So you see, Alma b'mecher koldu, if you just sold it without a regular, without doing it in front of the seven people and the seven people selling it in front of all the people, habayis v'hamois b'kedushasayu kaima, both the house and the money still keep the sanctity. You can't do anything with it. You have to. The shul remains a shul if it's just a regular sale. You can't sell a shul to make it not a shul. But if it was a case where the seven good of the city sell it in the presence of the people of the city, so then we say, afilu, turn the page, 26b, afilu lemishta be'shikra, even to purchase money to drink beer, shapir dam would be okay. In other words, you don't have to elevate it. Lemishta be'shikra zaktrashi, liknois bedomim, to purchase with the money, velasis shecher listos, to take personal money and to make beer or drinking, that's okay, it doesn't matter. Says the Gemara, Ravino Habalei Hahu Tilo de Beiknishto. This is what Rashi mentioned before. There was this heap, a destroyed building of a shul, was a heap destroyed. Tilo, called Bais Horus Korui Tel. You know, you have a destroyed house, it's called a heap. It talks about when the destruction of the Iran Nedachas, it'll be a forever heap. So he wanted to know, can you also Lekamed Rabashi? So he came, Ravina came before Rabashi. He says, am I allowed to sow that area where the fall down shul is? So he told him, go purchase it from the seven good of the city in the standing of the people of the city and sow it over there. Says the Gemara, Rami bar Abba, Rami the son of Abba, have a koboni beknishta. He was building a home. He was building a shul. Hava hahi knishta atikot. So there was an old shul. He wanted to destroy that old shul to bring the bricks and the beams minay from that shul. He wanted to use the beams and the bricks to bring it up into the new shul that he was building. He was building a new shul. He needed bricks and beams. So he wanted to take it, destroy the old shul, and bring it to the new shul. Kishuri, Zoktrashi, Koirish shall base Knesses Yoshon, or Yutzrichim lost Situm Bechodesh. They had the old beams that they needed to put it into the new one. They needed those beams. Yossi becoming boiling. So he's sitting and he was questioning Rab Chizda about the case that Rab Chizda said. Rab Chizda gave his case, it's in the Gemara Baba Basra Bashutvim. He said over there like this. Rab Chizda said, Leilister Beknishta, don't destroy one shul at the Boni Beknishta Achrita until you build the other shul. Don't throw it down before you have the first build the shul, then throw down the other one. That's what he said. So he was debating, trying to figure out, why did Rab Chizda say? Over there, the reason is because of negligence, which means we're afraid if you're going to throw down the other shul, Shum Pshusa, Shema Yivsha, he might be negligent and he's going to give up and he's not going to build another one. So you're going to end up throwing down one shul, you're never going to build the second one. That's why Reb Chizda said, no, don't throw it down, because you might never build the other shul if you throw down the first one. But Kehai Gavna might. But in our case, what's the situation? You're not just throwing down a shul, you're throwing it down to take the beams. You're not just breaking down a shul for another one, you're just building this shul. So also the comment that Papa. So he asked the question, Papa, am I allowed to take the beams and the bricks from the old shul? He said no. He prohibited him. He came the comment that Huna. Paravuna va'osale. So he didn't allow him to do so. So basically, he had to go get his own new bricks and new beams for his new shul. He didn't allow him to take him to the shul. Amar Rava, says Rava. All right, you know what? Let's leave it over here. Let's leave it over here. And we'll continue from here. Let's just give a short word, for Purim. Coming up, Parsha Zohar this Shabbos. Always remembering Amalek. Amalek cools us off. What does it mean? People feels sometimes an excitement for Yiddishkeit. And Amalek says, cool down. Which means you want to do the mitzvah, you want to be a good Jew, fine. Well, what do you need all that excitement for? Do the mitzvah without excitement. It cools you down. That's Amalek. Zocher es osel Amalek. We always got to remember. Amalek asher korcho baderech. Korcho means both. He met you, but it also means cooled you off. Try to take away that fire, that enthusiasm. Korcho baderech. Always got to remember that. Also, Purim, we read that after the whole story of the Megillah, Mordechai became second to the king. And it says that some of the friends in the Sanhedrin weren't so happy with him because he gave up his learning a little bit and now he was involved already. But the majority and most people agreed that while learning Torah is most essential, but saving lives at that time, becoming a Mishnah al-Melech was what needed to be done. And eventually, even if you give up from your own learning and from your own level, eventually the things that you're lacking, that you're missing, is actually made up to you. You're able to study and achieve in less time because you are out there helping other people. That's a lesson that the Rebbe has taught us all the time, not to just think about yourself and your own greatness and to just learn Torah, sit in the kollel, never go out to make a difference in the world. But the Rebbe taught us that's not the right way. What we need to do is make the world into a better place and help other Jews. And that was the majority of opinion, as we see in reality that there are so many souls that were lost that are being returned, and we will merit laihudim. Till next week, say goodbye. Everybody have a good Shabbos, a good Purim, and we'll meet again in 2 weeks.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Good Purim, and thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you very much, and everybody a good Shabbos and a good